Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. This is the big story that we're tracking this evening.
This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time.
Donald Trump creates history. He will become the first American president in 132 years to return to the White House after losing power. He's set to win all 7 swing states. Trump declares this will truly be the golden age of America. The tariff wars could escalate as Trump returns. He's pledged a 20% universal tariff on all goods imported to the U.S. and a 60% tariff on Chinese imports. Indian exports to the U.S. stand at over $75 billion annually.
We have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Trump hails Elon Musk at his victory speech, saying a star is born. Musk was among the early backers of Trump in the second term. Trump has promised to induct Musk into the White House to lead a government efficiency commission. It's a crushing defeat for Kamala Harris, who's yet to address her supporters and concede defeat. Democrats also lose control of the Senate and are likely to lose control of the U.S. Congress. From stocks to crypto, the Trump trade erupts across markets. Stock markets rise across Europe and the US. Bitcoin touches $75,000, hitting a record high. Crude oil prices ease. The Sensex and the Nifty rise in tandem with global markets. The Sensex reclaims 80,000. The rupee weakens to a new low against the US dollar as the greenback gathers strength. World leaders congratulate Donald Trump after his landmark victory. Prime Minister Modi calls on his friend to work together for global peace. Israel's Netanyahu calls it the world's greatest comeback. Leaders of UK, France, Ukraine and others congratulate Trump and promise to work together. Swiggy's 11,300 crore rupee IPO opens for public subscription. The issue saw strong interest from funds to raise over 5,000 crore rupees in the anchor book. Swiggy's CEO says margins are set to improve for food and quick commerce businesses. RBI's actions are not punitive but corrective, says the Governor Shaktikanta Das, after cracking the whip on select NBFCs. Also puts a spotlight on the skewed credit deposit ratio and weak underwriting by some lenders. Chief Economic Advisor to the government, Ananta Nageswaran, says the GDP growth may not touch 7% this financial year. Also adds there is a pickup in private and public capex, which could act as a tailwind. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu fires his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant in the middle of the wars in Gaza and Lebanon. This follows months of public disagreement over the course of the wars. Well, what a story it turned out to be. Donald Trump is set to return as the 47th president of the United States. He will become the first American president in 132 years to return to the White House after losing power. That's been a pretty convincing victory for Trump, as he's set to win all 7 swing states. A victorious Trump addressing supporters at Palm Beach in Florida, declaring a golden age for America. Trump was flanked by his running mate J.D. Vance, his family including wife Melania and his children. Trump promised to fight for America and fix everything. The mood somber at a watch party organized by the Harris campaign. Kamala Harris is yet to address supporters and concede defeat. The Republicans have managed to flip the Senate and take control. Republicans are also poised to take control of the U.S. Congress, which will put them in charge of both the executive and the legislature. In his victory speech, Trump singled out Elon Musk, saying a new star is born. Musk has been an early supporter of Trump's second bid for the White House. In fact, Trump has said Musk could join the government and lead what he called the Government Efficiency Commission. According to Trump and Musk, the aim of the commission will be to cut red tape, shrink the size of the government and foster innovation. Trump has also praised Robert Kennedy Jr., former Democrat who abandoned his presidential bid and endorsed Trump. RFK Jr. is notorious for his conspiracy theories and anti-vaccine campaigns. Trump has promised to make him the health czar, putting him in charge of organizations like the CDC, which are at the forefront of fighting the COVID pandemic. Here's Donald Trump and his victory speech.
Our country has never seen before nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. Tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon. Now he is. No, he's an amazing guy. He's a character. He's a special guy. He's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them. A few names like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he came in. And he's going to help make America healthy again. Leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby. This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country.
Well, that is Donald Trump addressing his supporters, a victory speech there from the incoming president of the United States of America, creating history, the second president in 132 years to come back to power after a break. We're joined now by Bob Dudley, the chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, the former chief of BP. Mr. Dudley, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me start by asking you about what you make of the Trump victory. I mean, markets, the equity markets have certainly given this a thumbs up. Currency markets are volatile with the dollar gathering strength, and commodity markets don't know what to quite make of it. How would you read the Trump victory?
Well, Shireen, it's good to see you again. And I said I would come on to talk about the climate change and the climate initiative, and I'm not a political commentator. I want to make that clear. I've been all day here in Abu Dhabi, the largest oil and gas and energy conference in the world of about 160,000 people. And we've all been busy in meetings and panels today. And I have to say, I came off my last one and found out that he had won. So I haven't been following the details of this. It seems to be a definitive win, which I'm happy about. I thought it would take 2 or 3 days before we actually would know who won, like what happened last time. So this is a definitive victory and a definitive margin in the election, which is a bit of a surprise to me and others. He's, of course, a very strong supporter of business and industry, and I think he will come in with a sort of renewed sense of energy with people like Elon Musk to, I would say, American industry and business. And of course, it's not what you say, it's what you do. He won't be behind the desk until January, but I believe he's pretty clear about the direction he wants to head. And what you say during a campaign and what you do after, you know, are often different with some politicians. But I think he will be committed to business. He's not anti-climate change, so I expect he will be very supportive of renewable energies. But I think there's another big trend happening in the United States and will happen in India, I think. The amount of energy required to build all these new data centers will be phenomenal. And we're going to need all forms of energy. So I think he will be supportive broadly of new energies and increasing production across the board. And of course, the world's going to need that. So I could go on about this. Shireen, you have any other questions?
Yes, Bob. You know, you're there, as you said, talking to leaders on what the road ahead looks like as far as the climate initiative is concerned. So in that context, let me ask you what you make of the supply-demand dynamics at this point in time. We've just had a decision by the OPEC Plus. We've, of course, got uncertainty with regards to China and what that potentially means as far as demand is concerned. What's weighing on the minds of leaders that you're speaking to at this point in time when it comes to the commodity markets?
Well, I think what's happening in commodity markets is sort of unrelated to the election. There may be some quick up and down in various commodities. I think the price of commodities broadly, including oil, what the world has its eye on more than anything is what's happening in China with economic growth, because it's the single biggest factor out there in terms of demand for commodities and use of commodities. So what's on the world leaders' minds and company world leaders, is lots of questions about what do you think is going to happen with China? What do you think is going to happen with China? Which you might not normally expect, but it's such a big economy. I think everyone who has been following this recently, the energy transition, been turned on its head in the last year. And people are starting to realize the energy demands of these data centers is going to be enormous. And I'm sure India will have them as well. And everybody wants to power them with renewable energy, but the issue is they will not even be close, have enough. So people are starting to recognize a new role for natural gas.
Yes, data centers are going to be.
Yeah, I see.
They will be energy guzzlers. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I see up there. I'm happy Trump's win is definitive. So let me tell you why it's definitive. It doesn't mean we're going to wait 2 days to know. And secondly, it's definitive that I think there's less chance of civil disruption in the United States. Because if it were really close, I would worry about how citizens would react. But this is fairly definitive, so that's why I'm happy.
Right. Since we were talking about China, Mr. Dudley, let's address the issue of China, and potentially now with the threat or the possibility of tariffs being imposed by a Trump administration. That's what they've promised as far as the campaign is concerned. If that were to happen, and there's no reason for us to believe that it won't, the impact that could have on China and the very fragile recovery that's currently underway.
Well, we already see tariffs. Both in Europe and the United States, for example, on electric vehicles. The thought is these are being produced, overproduced, and then sold at low prices, which would affect, for example, German auto industry. So those tariffs are already happening. I'm not exactly sure the impact in behaviors as a result of it. We don't know whether he'll impose tariffs. He's used the word. He may be just sending a signal that certain kinds of economic behaviors need to be kept within certain boundaries, or there will be tariffs. So that's hard to say right now. But tariffs are being used more and more and more, I would say, in the last 10 years. They're not always effective. There's ways around them sometimes. But we need to watch and listen very carefully. And we have to listen to him carefully between now and January to have any real idea of what he might plan to do. And in terms
that's
of,
right. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, India is such a strong growing economy, one of the fastest in the world. Certainly, of big countries, more than 7% growth, which is astounding, really. China grew last year at 4%, which is still a healthy growth rate. So, but for India, watching the price of oil is incredibly important, and the price of other imports, but oil has such a big impact on India. And so it's not out of control, runaway $100 oil now. It's 70 something, which is, I know it's hard on India, but we're in a somewhat stable period right now for India.
Yes, we certainly are in a stable period, and we have been seeing growth rates of 7% plus here in India. It has been a bit of an outlier if you look at the global context. But Mr. Dudley, let's talk about electric mobility as well, because there has been some concern on whether we are now seeing electric mobility kind of have the brakes being slammed on the growth because of the tapering down, the winding down as far as subsidies are concerned. How are you reading the road ahead as far as EVs are concerned, EV subsidies and EV growth itself on the mobility side?
So EVs are great. There has been subsidies. Those have been removed. And then just watch the tariffs placed on Chinese autos into Europe has really affected two things: the ability to buy a lower price EV. And then people are now a little concerned about, the mobility, the range of cars. So all kinds of new fears are coming into that marketplace. People are questioning, should I invest in that or not? The United States was talking about a massive United States network of charging stations. I think they've only built a few. So that's made people think twice. I see that happening in lots of countries around the world, for one. And then another thing I would note is I'm on the board of a copper company, big copper company. And I look at the demand that would be required for copper for all those new EVs and now the data centers and now the new grids. There's not really enough copper to meet some of those earlier very optimistic projections. So practicality and being practical about things is going to be, everybody's rethinking some of these things. But they're great. EVs are great. But
you know, speaking of things that are likely to shape supply and demand dynamics, you talked about China as being one of the big factors, but geopolitics, Mr. Dudley, and I wanted to get your thoughts on what you're hearing from people at this point in time as there continues to be an escalation with Israel and potentially now things with Iran escalating even further. And of course, we don't know how the Trump foreign policy is going to change things on the ground when we talk about either Israel and Iran. You know, what's weighing on the mind from a geopolitics standpoint that could have an implication for the oil markets going forward?
Well, Shreen, you're absolutely right. Geopolitics is another huge factor. It's actually had a big impact on the climate change energy initiatives when the conflict with Russia and Ukraine came on, because suddenly people had stopped talking about energy security. And so now people are worried about energy security. Countries need to know they have enough energy. Europe is still, in my view, a little bit fragile around getting through the winters with electric power and powered by natural gas. So that's on the minds of many, many leaders, and of course, companies who work in these various areas. There's concern. It's been contained between Russia and Ukraine so far. And that's sort of out of the spotlight as much as now, of course, what's happening in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran. I mean, that's quite a volatile. I'm not an expert in it, but clearly people are nervous about it. But here I am in Abu Dhabi, and the world roars ahead in the region and economically. So there's sort of two different ways to look at it depending where you are in the Middle East. The Middle East has got to be one of the greatest, fastest growing cash generating regions of the world right now. But it's on the mind of everyone in the world. And the concerns of Taiwan and China, which were in the spotlight, have kind of been moved aside as well for what's happening in the Middle East. But you can be sure the world leaders and leaders of companies review this daily.
Yes, I would imagine that it is being reviewed daily because it's changing every day. It is a dynamic situation and an uncertain situation that we are dealing with. Bob Dudley, it's always a pleasure. Many, many thanks for joining us from Abu Dhabi here on CNBC TV 18. We truly appreciate your time. Thanks very much, and we look forward to seeing you back here in India.
Thank you, Shree.
Well, thank you very much. We are going to head into a break, but there's a lot more coming up right here. Donald Trump's victory speech after his historic comeback. Stay on with us on CNBC TV 18.